Welcome into the Malamut Law pregame show live from Ocean Casino in Atlantic City, the amazing gallery, bar, book, and games. Forget anything you know about what was supposed to be the biggest game of the year, whether that was both games to this point against the Dallas Cowboys and the second one of those two coming up next week. Forget about what you knew about the Kansas City Chiefs game being circled in KC just 2 weeks ago. This is the biggest game of the season, the rematch of the NFC Championship game. And as Hassan Reddick put it, after last week's win over the Buffalo Bills, where the Eagles handled their business to improve to 10-1, there was a lot of boo-hoo coming from that 49er locker room all over the last couple of months, and immediately following that Eagles win where they punched their ticket to last year's Super Bowl. We'll be breaking it all down for the biggest game of the season and to see just how right and how much better this Philadelphia Eagles team can be compared to this 49ers squad. My name is Mark Farzetta. Once again, welcome in to the Malamut Law pregame show. We have Adam Malamut himself with us starting things off. Bill Colarulo from Legal Hands to the Face podcast, as well as the Philly Sports Power Hour here on the JAKIB Sports channel, and Eagles Hall of Famer Seth Joyner. Seth, I want to start it off with you, and I want to ask you this question. Fatigue has become a big factor heading into this game. It's been a storyline. The Eagles, over the last two games, they played 95 snaps just last week, and in total, 169 snaps for this defense over the last two games. They're facing a team that can control the clock with the way they run the ball. They're facing a team today that can also score quickly with big plays. How much does fatigue for you play a factor into this game against the 8-3 San Francisco 49ers?
Well, when you get into a game like this, it comes down to your will. When no doubt they played a lot of snaps, but I'm certain Nick Sirianni gave them a lot of rest this week. So if they took care of their body and they did what they needed to do, hopefully adrenaline will get them through. But this is the part of the game that people don't really talk about. It's a big deal to me, and I'd be curious to see how the Eagles come out and play. When you play in these high-leverage games and you play in these intense situations, it's a high adrenaline game, and it's really, really difficult each and every week to raise your intensity level back up and meet the demand. That's why this has been more of a gauntlet so much than the competition, is that they have to raise their level of competition week after week after week after week throughout this 5-6 game process. So I'm really interested to see how they come out, the energy that they come out with, because San Francisco is going to come in here breathing fire today, and they're going to have to match that intensity early in order to keep this game close. San Francisco is a front-running football team, okay? Their defensive line, they chum the waters when they have a lead. Everything offensively works much more efficiently for them when they have a lead. Just to prove my point, Brock Purdy, when he's winning, he's completing 71% of his passes, 8 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, with a 120.7 quarterback rating. When he's losing or they're behind, those numbers drop to 63% completion percentage, 2 touchdowns versus 4 interceptions, and his quarterback rating drops to 82. So this is a front-running team. And the Eagles are going to have to match that intensity out the gate today to keep this game close. It also takes away, and I'll get into it a little later on, it also takes away the things that they like to do best. And as we get through the show, we'll talk about some of those things with Christian McCaffrey, in my opinion, being the linchpin for this offense.
I know trash talk has also been a big part of this, probably one of the biggest storylines as well. Going into this game, again, a lot of boo-hoo, according to Hassan Reddick. Adam, when you look at the off the field, the extracurriculars, the talk that's been discussed so much, do you feel like that could be something that helps motivate the Eagles to get over that hump of maybe a little bit of fatigue setting in over the last two games?
It absolutely motivates them. This team is resilient. This team fights. They don't know that they're not supposed to be, or that they're supposed to be fatigued. They don't know that they're supposed to be worn down from all those snaps. What they know is they come out and fight, and we've seen it with the resiliency after halftime, with the halftime adjustments, when every other team would be tired going into the locker room. These guys come out strong. They come out like they should in the first quarter, but here, we've got – and listen, let's go back to the 49ers. I agree with Seth. These guys are a front-running team. But the 49ers lost to the Cleveland Browns. They lost to the Minnesota Vikings. They lost to the Cincinnati Bengals. Granted, the Eagles lost to the Jets. So I don't want to get too far down that rabbit hole, but this team's human. And if this bulletin board material hits like I think it will, I think they come out, the Eagles come out and punch the 49ers in the mouth right from the get-go.
No, I'm certainly rooting for that to be a factor. Bill, you and I were talking about it just before the show here about what Nick Sirianni was doing to almost ensure that is a motivating factor. The trash talk going on between these two teams since the NFC Championship game is a factor and a motivating factor for this Eagles team.
Surprised me a little bit, to be honest, because Nick Sirianni always talks about how it's just another game, get better each day, but there was no denying that there was a lot of revenge factor here on both sides. So I kind of like that Sirianni showed them all the trash talking, said, hey, take it personally today. But at the end of the day, look, we could talk about the whining and we could talk about the excuses. This is two really good football teams, and I know Adam's talking about the teams that the 49ers lost to, but this 49ers team, make no mistake about it, as much as I hate them as an Eagles fan, they are a really good team. You look at their offense, top 10 in almost every single category. Their defense, number 1 in points against. It's a big test for the Philadelphia Eagles. You talked about the fatigue. You talked about the rest. They're also going to be without starting linebacker Zach Cunningham going against a team that has Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, and Brandon Ayuk. A lot of people don't remember Brandon Ayuk is a really good wide receiver. So it's going to be a tough game. It's going to be a tough game. We'll get into our predictions and we'll break it all down, but won't be an easy one.
You mentioned who's out so far in this game. Yeah, Zach Cunningham is one of the guys that is out. Justin Evans, safety, obviously, is one of the guys that's out as well. We're looking forward to seeing what happens with Fletcher Cox. He was out there on the field during warm-ups. He's going to try to give it a go, according to some reports today, which is a great thing. He officially enters this game today before the inactives come out 90 minutes before kickoff as questionable. Grant Calcaterra, tight end, is also questionable, and Dallas Goedert, doubtful. We'll see if he is able to give it a go in this game today. But to keep it with you, Bill, one of the other interesting things is I can remember going back to the underdog, the original underdog Philadelphia Eagles that won that Super Bowl. And I remember after they clinched their trip to the Super Bowl, after they beat the Minnesota Vikings, Doug Peterson, he was at the podium at the Lincoln Financial Field, and he was talking about how they don't hear the outside noise, they don't hear any of that outside stuff, they don't care about the lines to the game, where you literally had Lane Johnson and just about every Eagle walking around in a dog mask because they did hear the underdog chatter that was going on away from the football field. So when you look at it from this perspective, having the Eagles again be 3-point underdogs going into the game today, aside from trash talk, other sports books are keeping them in the underdog category, and that seems to be their natural habitat during success.
What was Sirianni's quote? The city does well as the underdog. He knew Philadelphia from the movie Rocky. So Seth can talk more about this, but as an athlete, you're looking for anything to just try to get that edge, to put that chip on your shoulder. And this is just another thing that you could say, hey, look, even the national media, even the sports books don't believe in us today. But really, I don't think they care. I mean, I don't think they care. That we know why they put the odds on. We know why the gallery here has put the odds on. They're trying to make even bets on each side. So it doesn't really mean who's going to win the football game. It's, hey, we need to bring in the most money on each side. They want it even. They want it 50-50. But, hey, anything you could do to motivate you, why not?
Seth, is it a motivating factor? I mean, we talk about trash talk. We can talk about the lines to the game. Is all the extra stuff motivating to those players on the field?
Well, I mean, it's motivating leading up to your preparation, how you prepare for the game. I don't really see it as a motivating factor once the game gets started. You know, no one's standing back saying, oh, you know, they got us, you know, a 3-point underdog at home. How is that possible? Why is that possible? I don't think that really motivates them. But I think that, you know, if Nick Sirianni throughout the week was looking for motivation throughout the preparation process, then absolutely that's something that you throw out.
Mm-hmm. Adam, one of the things that people have been trying to judge on Nick Sirianni is what exactly he does here. And when you're an offensive-minded head coach and you don't call the plays, same thing for a defensive-minded head coach, and you're not the defensive coordinator de facto, people, what is it you say you do here? And Nick Sirianni just seems to be a guy that just knows how to win and knows to get his players focused and motivated enough to get to the point where they are ready to win. Would you say that's the biggest and best attribute that Nick Sirianni has as a head coach?
That's any coach, right? So when you talk about coaches being responsive to or players rather, being responsive to the coaches. Coaches are the grand motivators. They're the people who get the players ready, get their mindset ready. You have leaders in the locker room. I know Seth played on a bunch of teams that had amazing, some of the best defensive coordinators in the history of the game, but they're facilitators. They're not just out there with X's and O's. They're out there talking about, what is it that this team's bringing to us? What are our pressure points? But more importantly, what are their pressure points? So for Sirianni, in my opinion, yeah, he's a motivator. He's going to get out there and talk about these guys want to talk trash on us. Philadelphia, the dog mask fits Philadelphia. By the way, my wife wore the dog mask to the Super Bowl when we went, so in 2017. But, I mean,
does she have it now? Because it worked then. I hope she has it now.
Listen, I'm not asking her to put that on again. That was a big ask.
Gotcha.
But she wore that dog mask to the Super Bowl, and a lot of other people did too. So we're still trying to clear, infectious disease on that. But we had a blast. But we had a blast because that's the Philadelphia vibe. That's the way that the Philadelphia fans react, and that's why these players, I think, love playing here. So I think the coach fits right in with that. He's got a big heartbeat. And these players know that if the coach is out there pitching to them, they need to listen. And we talked about this before. I think they respond great to him.
I got to say, and I know I led the show with it, but we were talking about this being the biggest game of the year. Seth, we've talked a lot in the past about the Dallas Cowboys, and Bill, we've talked about the Dallas Cowboys and all that history there. But when it comes to all the trash talk, not just for these teams of being the best teams in the NFC, but this is a big game to the fan bases. And I know we've all paid attention, we've all seen the clips, we've all seen the headlines and the clickbait that's been out there regarding the fan base of the San Francisco 49ers, and radio shows and also digital media outlets out there saying that the Eagles were just lucky to be able to beat the San Francisco 49ers in Philly for the NFC Championship game. You're lucky that Brock Purdy got hurt. You're lucky this, you're lucky that. To me, this is a huge battle between the fan bases, the voices away from the game itself. But I look at this game not just for the standings, not just for playoff implications, but for the battle of the fan bases. I look at this game way bigger than I look at any Dallas Cowboys game. Seth, do you say that this is the biggest game on the regular season slate?
It's the biggest game because it's the next game, just like Nick Sirianni always says. Once we move past this game next week, the biggest game will be the next one, which is the Dallas Cowboys is coming up on the schedule. So I never approach it from that standpoint. You can only play one game at a time. The fans affect the game more so when you're at home than when you're on the road, and how you deal with fan bases and how you deal with playing on the road. But it's bragging rights, and not only have the players, whined and complained about how last year's game turned out, but the fan bases have gone back and forth, for the last, 8, 9, 10 months about how that game wound up. The excuses are abundant. The thing that nobody really ever talks about is San Francisco came in here, for the NFC Championship game, the number one ranked defense in the National Football League, giving up the fewest points in the National Football League at that time. And they got a 31-piece hung on them, okay? So you can talk about having Brock Purdy and not having Brock Purdy, and I'll go back in my notes and I'll give you those numbers later on, but I promise you, 31 points was a major difference, okay? Brock Purdy wasn't stopping Jalen Hurts in that offense from putting points on the board and getting in the end zone last game. So there's a lot of factors, to factor into today's game. And there's a lot that's being said. We'll procrastinate and talk about, what might happen and what could happen. But the rubber really meets the road at 4:25, when you kick off and these teams face each other and the chess masters begin to move the pieces around the board trying to figure out what to do to win this football game.
Bill, biggest game of the year or no?
I've been saying it all week on the Philly Sports Power Hour. As much as I want to see the Philadelphia Eagles win this football game, I don't think it's as big as a game as we want to make it out to be. Yes, it is the biggest game because it's the next one on the schedule. Not saying the Eagles are going to lose today. We'll give our predictions at the end of the show. But even if the Philadelphia Eagles were to lose this football game, they are still in the driver's seat to get the number 1 seed. They control their own destiny the rest of the way. So I think this game means a lot more to the 49ers than it does to the Philadelphia Eagles. And we had to wait 9 months with the excuses and the whining. I have a really strong feeling it's only going to be about a month and a half, and we're going to be right back here for the NFC Championship.
It could very well be. Adam, what say you? Is this the biggest one on the schedule?
I agree with what Bill said. And just to go back for a minute, Seth straightened me out. During the Eagles-Cowboys game, I said that I was going to pause my friendships with Cowboys fans until after the game, and he said he doesn't have any friends that are Cowboys fans. I don't have any friends that are 49ers fans. So I don't like complaining. I don't like people who make excuses. I don't like this should have happened or that should have happened. You know, I think the biggest game on the schedule is the game that they're playing today. You can't look ahead. This is the NFL. Who would have thought we would have lost to the Jets? I mean, the Little Sisters of St. Mary's could beat the Jets. We lost to the Jets. You know, the next game, that's the biggest game. And so forth and so on. When we hit the playoffs, it's going to be every game. And we're going to hit the playoffs. So the important piece here is for us to beat them. I don't look at it as our fans versus their fans. There's no better fan base than the Philadelphia Eagles fans. And if the people at the gallery bar behind us could hear me, I have no doubt they'd be rioting over that.
Very good. That pretty much covers all the storylines going into today's game against the 49ers. To get into the X's and O's a little bit with this game, one of the things that really jumps out to me, fellas, is that obviously the San Francisco 49ers, from an offensive perspective, they are extremely versatile. And then within the versatility they have in being able to run and throw and also be able to catch that football lies versatility individually with guys like Deebo Samuel, who calls himself a wide back, who can run the football and also catch it. A guy like Christian McCaffrey, who might be the back wide in this offense, being able to run the football, leading the NFL in rushing, and then also having close to 400 yards receiving at the same time for this football team. Versatility within the versatility. Seth, when it comes down to the X's and O's in this game, what and how do the Eagles stop this offensive attack with Brock Purdy and all his weapons?
Well, the Eagles have the fortune of having played against the Miami Dolphins earlier in the year, and Mike McDaniels is really a disciple of Kyle Shanahan, and they run a lot of similar things. And as I began to break down this 49ers team this week, these are the things that became evident to me. If you go back, way back, when we played against the Washington Redskins, when they were the Washington Redskins and Joe Gibbs was the head coach, they knew that we ran what was called automatic fronts and coverages. We had an automatic defense for every front that you came out with and a coverage for every front. We had a blitz the formation for every formation that you had. So they knew that. So what they would do is they would come out with one formation and they shift. We'd have to change defenses. Then they sent a guy in motion. It changed the formation again. Now you had to change defenses again. And what they were really trying to do is really create as much chaos as they could, trying to get somebody not to get the check and create a mistake on the defensive side of the ball. The other thing was they had great versatility. You could take Gary Clark and put him in Art Monk's place, and take Art Monk and put him in Gary Clark and Ricky Jackson's place, okay? Then, you know, you had these interchangeable tight ends. You had some tight ends that blocked. You had some tight ends, you know, that were just pass receiving tight ends, okay? And when it took me the first 4 years of my career, I could not figure it out because they had what looked like so many formations. But because those pieces were so diverse, they could put them in different places and make it look like a different formation, when in reality, they probably only had like 5 formations and maybe 8 total plays. 8 total plays. When I look at the San Francisco 49ers, they remind me of that. They remind me of that because McCaffrey and Deebo Samuels are interchangeable. You can put either one in the slot, you can put either one in the backfield, and you can hand them the ball. You can take Juszczyk and Kittles, and you could do the same things with them, okay? Now, what they really want to do, and I would venture to say, if I could take all of their offense and put it in AI and have it spit out what they do, it would tell me that they really only have a handful of plays and a handful of formations But with all the window dressings and all the putting players in different positions, it makes it look like they're so diverse, you know. But really what they want to be is they want to be a team that can run the football, go play action pass with Brock Purdy. They want to be able to control the line of scrimmage. You know, the games that they lost this year, Christian McCaffrey did not run the football particularly well. Against the Browns, he had 25 carries for 108 yards. Okay, he got injured in that game, so he really wasn't 100%. The Vikings, 22 carries for 65 yards. The Bengals, 23 carries for 113 yards, okay? So and really, that's their overall, I'm sorry. Against the Browns, he had 15 carries for 45 yards. Against the Vikings, 15 carries for 45 yards. 12 carries for 54 yards against the Bengals. Those numbers are pretty pedestrian for Christian McCaffrey. So when you take the run game away from them, you take away the elements of really what they want to do. They want to run play action pass. They want to go bootleg. They want to go misdirection. And they're giving you all of this motion to confuse you so that when they go play action pass, now Brock Purdy, who is very accurate, now he can throw the ball on time and in rhythm. Now, if you nullify their ability to run the football, then you nullify the elements that really makes this offense go. And to me, Christian McCaffrey is the key. Deebo Samuels, when he's in the backfield, is the key. Deebo Samuel start coming across the formation. Somebody ought to be telling that defensive end to stand up. Here comes the jet sweep. Every single time. Christian McCaffrey, same thing. He comes across. He's lined up in the slot. He comes across. Hey, here comes the jet sweep. Take away the elements that allows them to be finesse. Now, if you allow them to run the ball, they will physical you. But they're one of the few teams that I know that can physical you, but they also try to finesse you. They are more finesse than anything else. But if you hit them in the mouth and you take away the run game, now you take away the elements that really makes this defense fly. You give yourself a chance to stay in the game and not give them a lead, per my stats on Brock Purdy earlier, and now you can make him a very average quarterback, in my opinion.
To keep with you, when you're talking about the complexities, though, of that offense being able to run so many different things out of similar formations, how much does it help a guy like Sean Desai to at least have been with the Seattle Seahawks last year and seen this San Francisco 49ers team 3 different times?
All of those things are advantages. The fact that he's seen them and called defenses against them before or was on the staff and understand how they tried to attack that defense. The fact that he, played against, Mike McDaniels earlier this year and beat them tells me that he knew some things and had some ideas about how to get that offense under control, how not to, get your eyes out of the wrong positions because they're doing all this shifting and all this motion. It's all window dressing. It really is. What guys need to do is focus in on your key, pay attention to the details, and when the ball is snapped, trust what your eyes see and play it. If you're looking at the motion guy when you should be looking at your key, you're going to get in trouble.
All right, Adam, I want to ask you this question more specifically about the Eagles' defense attacking that offense. One of the stars of the game last year in the NFC Championship game was Hassan Reddick, and he has been just a man on fire playing well for this football team ever since he got the cast off his hand. Do you look at him as a guy that needs to be close to an MVP in this game in order for the Eagles to win this?
I think Hassan Reddick has to be close to an MVP, but I also think that if you're not getting the push up the middle, if you're not getting that pressure on Purdy, Purdy is very accurate. And look, the more you make him get the ball out of his hands early, the better opportunity you're going to have for your defensive backs, the better opportunity you're going to have, to give Purdy the reason to start moving around and get Hassan to him a little bit quicker.
Fair enough. Bill, real quick with you. Talking about what Adam, just to take off from there for a second, the defensive tackle position. We've talked about fatigue when we started out the show, talking about how it could affect this game. Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis, the fatigue for them has almost been non-existent. Jordan Davis dove to make a play on Josh Allen, took a little bit of a nap there on the field for a second, and then came back and then continued to whoop ass. When you see a guy like this playing in the middle of the defensive line, knowing how much pressure is going to be a factor in this, how confident are you that they'll be able to bring the pain, bring the noise on that defensive line interior?
Well, we're going to talk to John McMullen shortly and find out, I guess, if Fletcher Cox is playing today. Because if Cox is not, you're going to ask a lot of Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter again. They played a lot of snaps against Buffalo. Thankfully, Milton Williams is coming back. but whoever is healthy at that defensive tackle position, they not only have to stop the run, they do need to create that interior pressure on Brock Purdy, because we'll talk when we get back. One thing this team doesn't do, the 49ers, is turn the ball over very much. Number one in turnover differential, and that's going to be a big factor today.
Yeah, and they take that ball away a whole hell of a lot as well. We will be going to Lincoln Financial Field in just a moment. When we come back, talk to our friend John McMullen, host of Birds 365, along with our friend Jody McDonald, and we'll get the latest on the weather conditions. Another rain-soaked game expected here for the Eagles, what will be their third straight game playing in heavy precipitation. And then we'll also get the inactives from John coming up in a minute here on the amazing Malamut Law pregame show.